Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and of course with me is Milly.
Hi.
We have Dan.
Hi.
And the special guest who will be interviewing today is Stephen Silver. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So you've got an absolutely amazing career that we're really looking forward to diving into today, kind of building a timeline of everything. And I guess, like, at least according to IMDb, I know these things aren't always accurate, but your career as a character designer started in 1998. But before that point, what kind of set you on that path to become a character designer and artist in general?
Yeah, so before then, I was drawing caricatures. I was making my living drawing caricatures in theme parks. I got hired doing that at SeaWorld in San Diego, where I was living. I'm originally from England, and went from London, and I moved to America when I was 10 years old. And then at after high school, I wasn't sure, like I was always like drawing for my high school newspaper. I was always drawing in people's yearbooks and all that. And then my parents wanted me to go to college, but my brain just couldn't function like that. Academically, I failed miserably because I was always drawing. And then I heard an opportunity of someone said, hey, they're looking for artists to do caricatures. And that's what I was doing. I was kind of always making fun of my teachers in school anyway and drawing everyone's caricature. So from there, I went and applied to the SeaWorld job and got that. So that started my career in art by just learning how to do that. And then I would just show up to, and always just keeping my ears out, just and eyes open, listening to, are there any cartoonist groups? Are there any cartoonist artists anywhere? And I went to a meeting where it was called the Southern California Cartoonist Society, where all these cartoonists who do comic strips would show up all the time, and they would always have guest speakers, bring different people from the industry. And one evening when I was there, they had a guest who was a storyboard artist at Warner Brothers on a show called Freakazoid, which you probably may remember. And he invited me up there, and he ended up showing my work to a team that was looking for a character designer. And this was actually back in 1997, about August of 97. And that's what got me started in animation. So I just went from caricatures to character design. Yeah, no school in between.
Well, it's incredible to hear that it seems that from such a young age, you certainly knew what you enjoyed and you knew what you were exceptional at. So, I mean, kind of on that, was there any artist in particular that you felt inspired by or enjoyed the work of, or any shows that kind of, the characters and how they were designed kind of inspired you at all?
Yeah, I would really say that for me, just even just growing up in England and just having three channels at the time, ABC, BBC One, BBC Two, and before all that, I was always watching Hanna-Barbera. So Hanna-Barbera was really my insight at a young age into just animation and art from watching from Hong Kong Fooey, Scooby Doo, Tom and Jerry, just all the classics, the Flintstones, and just watching all those. So I always had like a fascination for cartoons based on from the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and then slowly moved into just feature films. I was just loved the Disney feature films like 101 Dalmatians, The Sword and the Stone. Those were just really my influences. And then that was on that cartoon realm, but the caricature realm was Mad Magazine was my biggest influence into the caricature realm. And then once I got started in at Warner Brothers, the beautiful thing about that was I was really exposed to just a lot of all the previous artists through the years, grabbing model sheets and model packs and studying just, I got to study a turnaround and expressions and attitudes. And I was really learning a lot when I was at Warner Brothers, because that was my start into that. And then slowly I'd always buy books wherever I can. I was very illustrative illustrator heavy at the time too. Like I thought I wanted to be an illustrator, moving into like a Norman Rockwell, sort of facet. And I was looking at just a lot of illustration at that time and learning how to really draw, learning how to draw portraits, learning how to draw the figure. And then it kept moving more and more into cartooning, where I just found, my true love is this cartooning and character design.
Yeah, and we understand that you're a teacher as well. Is there any advice that you would have to people watching this who are aspiring to follow in your footsteps as a character designer?
Yeah, so I run an online school. It's called the Silver Drawing Academy. And what I do there is I'm just really just breaking down what character design is. I have just a bunch of short form video lessons because there really is so much involved in learning to design character. It seems like a lot, but really when it comes down to it, it really all comes down to observation. That's really the truest form of it, that you get a keen eye, that you're observing people in life, in public, you're observing people's mannerisms, you're just looking at different artwork, different shows, movies, and you start to see things. So even when you're designing for animated cartoons, your mindset is saying, oh, I got to draw that villain or that creepy person or this sort of just patron who's going into the coffee store. Who have I seen? What can I sort of regurgitate? And you get ideas of body language, and it all really comes down to I think for if you want to be a character designer in the industry, the most important skill you have to have is versatility. You need to be able to adapt. It's even when I was working on from Scooby Doo to Kim Possible, Danny Phantom, whatever the shows that you're part of or you do, you got to be able to adapt to a lot of different styles. And if you get solid at shape language, if you get solid at construction, these are just real important elements to be able to do this sort of thing. And even with Scooby Doo, and I gotta say, I just love you guys' background, all the Scooby Doo back there. But it's very unique, and how they've sort of really taken that franchise, and you've seen all the different styles, right, that have come out of it, all the different ways that they say we're going to do Scooby Doo this way, that way. I think now I can't even remember. I think maybe I've worked on about 4 different Scooby Doo styles, now in my career. One of the coolest ones that I did was very short, where one of my favorite artists is this caricature artist named Al Hirschfeld, and he's very linear. His lines are very organic and a huge influence, to me. And I had the opportunity for, I think it was called like Fright Night or something like it was a Scooby Doo direct to video, but they asked me to do the opening title sequence, create all the Scooby Doo characters in the show style of sort of like Al Hirschfeld. So having to adapt that, so that was really cool. Yeah, but that's being versatile is the most important thing, and that's what I'm trying to teach people all the time, is that how to break your habits, get more versatile, bring feeling into your drawings, and all these things are very important.
That's incredible. I do think I know what you're mentioning there. I think it was the opening titles for the Stage Fright movie.
Stage Fright. That's the one.
Incredible.
That's the one. Actually, I just got to show you because I've been put together this book that I did through Kickstarter. I don't know if you can see, but I have just some of the Scooby. You can see just some of my rough sketches for this that I have in there. Here's just like Scooby, himself and Shaggy, through there, but just done more in a sort of more linear style, in the Hirschfeld style. Yeah, it's cool.
That's actually that is incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is amazing. And will that book be made available like publicly at all?
Yeah, it will. I did a Kickstarter and that went really well, and I'm receiving my books early September. And once I send out to all my Kickstarter followers, then I'm going to have it on my website, which is silvertoons.com, and I'll be able to ship them out from there, so it'll be available for everyone.
That is amazing. I'll definitely try and find a way to see if we can get that imported to the UK because that just looks
Yeah,
absolutely,
absolutely.
absolutely incredible. We definitely
Yeah,
got
thanks.
maybe some questions about all of that later, but I
Yeah.
really like the message that you spread about the versatility and everything. But in terms of the messages that I guess life lessons perhaps that you learned either early on at Warner Brothers or early on before your career began, is there any lesson that you learned from that stage that has stayed with you for the longest and maybe that you teach yourself now?
Yeah, I'd say like one of the biggest lessons that I ever learned in this industry is three words, and that is do not settle. And that sort of like stuck with me through my whole career and even the way that I teach now. And my approach is you just don't settle on your first idea. And that is, it's a typical like kind of like high school mentality approach when you're drawing, you're just rendering the hell out of your sketch, just all these details, cross hatching, just that one drawing that you do, as opposed to the reality is you need to not settle and draw many variations of a character and just trying to really figure something out. And that was one of the most important lessons. And of course, just really just coming back to just that observation and just drawing all the time, even if it's for 10 minutes a day. Those things are important. It's just that persistence is what's gonna just carry you through, and also just very much knowing what it is you want to do. What is that desire? What do you really want to do? And when you can start to sort name that, what that is, then all of your focus and your attention can start to go in that direction. And I think that's very important as an artist. The sooner you kind of figure that out, the better. It's not that you can't draw multiple things. I know most artists, including myself, are really kind of all over the place, a lot, and can't always just pay attention and have a hard time focusing. I know that I do. But I think just playing around and exploring and experimenting, trying different mediums all the time, all these sort of things are just very important. But do not settle was the one thing that I would say to anyone. That gives you that opportunity to really find something unique that you might not have thought of. Every show that I've ever worked on, it's never been the first design that's ever been picked. It's just been multiple variations of the same idea over and over again until it just seems to work out.
There's definitely some great evidence for that methodology in your filmography, given that there's like so many iconic things that we can just pick out of. Like Kim Possible, we could probably have our own show just dedicated to Kim Possible at this point, because the amount of times I'd come back from school and that would be on, it's just absolutely iconic. So I wanted to ask, how did your work on Kim Possible come about?
Yeah, the great thing was, so I was at Warner Brothers at the time. I was working on a show called, I was working on the show called Hysteria. That's the first show that I was hired on at Warner Brothers. And then I was working on this short-lived show, and I feel so bad I can't even remember the name of it right now. But a friend of mine, and this is the most important thing, is to stay connected and make friends, and because you hear things. And a friend of mine said, hey, they're looking for a Kevin Smith who did Clerks, was doing an animated series called Clerks, the Animated Series, and they'd been going through a lot of designers, and they were trying to find a designer for the show. So a friend of mine knew some people at Disney, and his good friend was this guy named Wade, who worked at Disney, and he said, hey, let me show your portfolio to put you in contact with this guy Wade. So I went and met with Wade, got in contact, and he put me in contact with who's now one of my great friends, Chris Bailey. And Chris Bailey was the director of the show, director producer on the show Clerks, and we met, and he ended up hired me on to do Clerks, the animated series. So then that's how I sort of built my relationship up at Disney, got into Disney. That was my first job, and started to build this relationship with Chris. And, it was short-lived. We only did like 6 episodes, and then they ended up moving me on to another show in the interim. And then while I was working on, I think it was maybe a couple shows in between. And then Chris called me and said, "Hey, we got this new show, Kim Possible. Do you want to take a stab at drawing the characters?" And the show I was on at Disney was a show called Weekenders at that point. And I'm like, I wasn't having the best time on it. It wasn't challenging to me. And I just wanted more of a challenge. And I said, yeah, this will be great. So I started just doing a bunch of development sketches for them. And Chris really liked where I was going and what I was coming up with. And so then they pulled me off of Weekenders and brought me onto Kim Possible full time to start developing all the characters on that show. And that's how I got my how I was introduced onto the Kim Possible series. And it was a fast moving machine because they were already wanting to do this. The studio was really excited about, what this could be for the studio, and they were just really fast tracking it. So we were having to work pretty quickly just in regards to doing the development. But it was talk about do not settle. There was so much development, and so much work that was done on trying to just really think about all those characters and what they would look like and how they would be. Sometimes at first I would draw Kim Possible. Her hair was a little too short, or maybe her body wasn't athletic enough for all the tumbles and rolls and how skilled she was. That okay, let's do this. So you're constantly making changes back and forth, but beautiful, great experience. I love my time at the studio at that time. It was great.
It's so interesting to hear about. I mean, I remember staying up to watch Kim Possible on Disney Channel. I think it was one of the last things that showed before it went to like the adverts for the evening, and there was no more shows left for the rest of the day. So I remember staying up just for that. And you were saying about kind of, the process of developing the characters. Is there any designs or characters to design that were, your favorites to work on? Were there any that perhaps came together quicker than some of the others that perhaps required a bit more thought?
Yeah, there were definitely some that were more challenging, some that came quicker. I always loved working on the villains. My favorite thing was every time I got a script, because when you first design a show, what you're designing is the main lineup. So you're designing, Kim and Ron and Rufus, her parents, the Wade, or just all the main characters. And once you get that lineup and you form that, those become just part of the main model pack. They're usually in every single show, and maybe you're doing costume changes from that point out. Okay, Kim needs to be in scuba wear. She needs to be wearing a dress. She's in this and that. So you do a lot of costume changes from episode to episode. But each episode you'll get all those new characters that get introduced, those incidental characters they're called, where these might just be the background kids. They might be the people running out of a coffee shop. They might be people in a crowd, people doing whatever. And then you get the villains and the henchmen and all these extra characters. So I always love that. Like, who's the main villain? Who are we focusing on for this episode? And that was always fun. I loved Draken from the get-go. He was just so comical. And, it's funny, I even in here, I even have this where this book, I'll just kind of like show you real quick. Again, this is like early development. You'll be able to see like these were over here. These were some just early, Drakens. Even at first, you got this guy. We thought maybe that guy could be, Draken through there. So, it's just, and then we got to, this guy, and you can see the body shape is there. But then we just started evolving it and changing it. And it was just so much fun just working on the villains. And one of the most challenging characters that I always remember was Senior, because I didn't know who was voicing him for the longest time. And I was doing all this development and all these designs, and it kept getting rejected. No, it's just not feeling like him. And then they eventually said, just think about Ricardo Montalban. It's going to be voiced by him. It's like, why the hell didn't you tell me that 2 weeks ago? And then from there, I just started. Then it sort of like came together for that character.
That's amazing. I can't believe getting to see those sketches either. I mean, Gosh, so incredible. And I guess the kind of switching over to the next topic of Scooby Doo, as we'd kind of started to touch on, you of course did work on several variations of the gang. We're looking forward to getting into all of that. But before working on Scooby, how familiar were you with that as a franchise?
Oh, very familiar. Yeah, that's a show that I just grew up on, you know, from childhood all the way through. So I was always connected to that in a way, and just so, yeah, extremely familiar with it, and just always loved all the, again, just the different guests, and that, you know, just the you know, the people that they would have, the villains that they would have, and the caricatures they would have. I was always loved that. Especially the early original Scooby Doo's, and that's why it was so great when I had the opportunity to work on the, you know, Guess Who Scooby Doo series, being able to do what they did way back when, where you're just kind of caricaturing these celebrities, was really fun. But yeah, it was my childhood with Scooby Doo. Yeah.
Yeah, and so from a character design perspective, is there a particular member of the Scooby Gang that you feel is either the best designed or like has the most potential to be adapted?
Well, you know, I thought they were also, what I like about them, they're just also, you know, unique and so different in their just the way they are, you know, just even their shape language, the way they are, you know, when you just look at Fred, and yeah, it just makes sense that Fred's just built the way that he's built and drawn, just so much more confident in the way, even just in the front three-quarter view, if you were to draw him, you know, his sort of like chest is out, and, you know, good looking guy, and then you have Shaggy, and you get that posture, you know, and that feeling of that sort of like, you know, droopiness in him that gets carried into the designs. And just, yeah, the other characters, they're just all, I think, just brilliant in their own way, and the way they're designed. It's just instant recognition of, you don't even need to kind of know anything about them if you just look at the imagery and you get it. And I think that's what always, what I loved about Scooby Doo. And the beautiful thing about working in the industry is having access to all the original model packs and everything like that. So you get to see all the, just the turnarounds, the expression drawings. Here's how you draw the hands. Here's how you draw this. Here's how you draw that. And I had access to all of that when I worked at Warner Brothers back in the day, and that was tremendous. But yeah, they're all just so unique in their own way to me. I don't know. I, again, grew up on it, and I also love that, you know, I mean, they're drawn, and you know, each iteration was so different with proportion wise. But when you look at the Scooby Doo characters, they're, you know, they're the almost like the 6-7 heads tall characters. Usually when you're working on animated properties, you'll base a character's actual height off of their head, and you might say this character is 8 heads tall or 7 heads tall, where you can take a head and you start to drop it down, and you determine to how tall the character is to put them on model. And the Scooby Doo gang was, again, just more, you know, they weren't super cartoony, weren't super, you know, pushed or extreme. And then these other iterations would sometimes get a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more pushed, and you're playing with that. So the original Scooby Gang could be a little bit more challenging, because you got to know more about anatomy, right? So you got to, you know, they really function anatomically correct, and where their elbows, where they bend, where their knees, and how you move them. If you have a good, strong sense of figure drawing and just drawing the human figure, you're going to have a better chance of drawing those characters, where a lot of people struggle drawing those characters, you know, especially some of the storyboard artists. I would always hear, you know, especially on Guess Who, just different storyboard artists having a lot of trouble drawing those characters, because you had to have a strong skill set, a drawing ability. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, you don't realize just what goes into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your first Scooby project was credited as Mystery Incorporated. So do you remember what characters in particular you designed for that show?
I don't remember particularly, because I wasn't in-house at that point. I was working, I think, at Disney still, and I was doing freelance for the shows. So I was doing just a lot of, I would get, every couple weeks, they'd send me a bunch of characters to do from different scripts, because they were so overloaded. And that's where they would hire, they'd have their in-house designers, But then when they needed help, they had called me and asked me to just do those different characters. I can't remember which villains or which incidentals were drawn yet. It was such a long time ago, but that was something how it would usually work. And all the shows, all the Scoobies that I ended up doing, none of them I was in-house anymore. I just took them on as freelance jobs from there. Yeah, except for the last one, which the Guess Who, that was like a major one where I was responsible for doing all the caricatures. And I got stories about that one when you guys are ready to hear about that one. But that was my responsibility on that show.
That's incredible. Definitely looking forward to getting onto that. And so I guess this may be a bit more of a general question now. Because Mystery Incorporated in nature, when you compare it to something like Guess Who, was going for a bit more of a darker approach. In general, when it comes to animation and demographics, from a character design point of view, what are the kind of subtle adjustments that you may need to keep in mind when maybe designing a show for like a character for a dark show versus a completely family-friendly show?
Yeah, I think really it's just sometimes just a matter of your boldness of line line quality can really affect that, but also sharpness of the characters. I think if I can recall, just the mystery one was a lot more sharper angles within the show style, and then you see the other ones maybe a little softer, a little bit more rounder on the characters. Just their features are a little bit rounder, and that can make all the difference in the world. And also when you are doing something and making a little bit more for an older audience or a little darker, that's where you are really making sure that you're keeping to those more human proportion, specifically where you're getting into that 6-7 head tall characters. You're not making the heads a little bit more oversized. If you look at a show like Kim Possible or even Danny Phantom and things like that, and even some of those other Scooby-Doos where the head sizes would get just a little bit bigger in proportion to the actual bodies, it just cartoonies it up just a little bit more. Again, how soft are you going on your edges to oppose how angular you're getting on the edges? That's to me, what can really separate the two genres there.
Because you've spoken a little bit about this, but the opening titles to Stage Fright, they're just amazing. Like, because I think you posted it up on YouTube, and it's just such a catchy song as well. But the designs, of course, were completely amazing. I wanted to ask, what type of direction were you given when it comes to that opening, and what were some of the ups and possibly downs about doing that?
Yeah, all I was given was there was actually two things I had to do. I was just told, hey, I was brought in and they said, we got this, show, the Stage Fright, and we're doing the opening sequence, but we want you to draw the gang in two different styles. The first style we want you to draw it in is in an Al Hirschfeld style, and the other style that we want you to do it in is a UPA style. So just very old, sort of like classic Hanna-Barbera. So I have that version too. That never got seen. I think I posted it online in different places, so you can see the whole Scooby Gang done in the whole UPA style. And that's it. So, and then what I did was I would just present it to them, and it went pretty quick. I mean, I don't remember having any revisions or anything at that point. I just kind of did my version. And then I showed it to them, and they said, this is great, this is it. And then that goes to the board artists. And then the board artists would board out the whole sequence. And then I would get back certain frames, storyboard panels that now they want me just to now put the character on model and just tighten up those drawings, because the board artists are drawing things very loose and not on model. It doesn't look like the characters per se. So now I'm just posing them in the position that they need to be for the animators, just to be more accurate when they're actually drawing the characters. And that's how that process would work.
Yeah, I think it was possibly Cole Rothacker shared up the UPA Scoobies that you might have done. I think it was the Scooby Doo gang as astronauts, perhaps.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Was that for like an alternate opening titles, or was that for
that was for alternate opening title. Yeah, for instead of going the one that they did, it was either going to be that one or they were going to switch and do something completely different. I think they were just not sure which way they were going quite yet. Yeah.
That's amazing. And something I always think about the opening titles is I'd love to see those designs adapted into, like, see those the gang designed that way in a series as well. I think there's certainly been some exceptional designs, that have been one of them where it's kind of like, we could use this design for a lot longer than we have. It seems
absolutely.
sometimes like it should go beyond the titles.
It's not too late. They keep, there's always going to be another Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo's not going anywhere, right? So it's just, if they ever want to say, hey, what other style can we do an adaptation? Well, you already have it. So if they're ever going to do it and they hear this, I'd love to come back on and do it.
Oh, we'd certainly love for that too. And the next Scooby project that you're listed as working on was Be Cool Scooby Doo. And something that we always trying to like to find out more about is kind of how projects differ. And one of the differences here was I believe the title you were given for this was character cleanup as opposed to character designer. Is that different, or is it just, I know certain projects use different names and different titles? Did it differ at all, or was it actually quite similar?
Yeah, on that show, I think because I was doing, so once again, I came on and I was helping out a lot. So there is that, but I was also designing characters, but I think I was doing more cleanup on characters than I was designing new characters. So a character design cleanup is you're coming on, you're getting just the roughs, and now the in-house character designers, they can't keep up. There's just too much that's coming on, so now they need a cleanup department, and not all shows will offer that. It depends on the budget. Most of the time you're responsible for designing your character and cleaning it up. Some shows you just design the rough sketch and then you send it to a cleanup department to do it. On this was just doing the cleanup on a lot of those characters that were coming my way from other people had designed them, and now I'm just putting a nice clean line on it on top of that. So it was a balance. I was definitely doing more cleanup than I was design on that show, but those are the two different types that you'll work with.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. And I guess my next kind of question does move on, of course, to look at the most recent project you did with Guess Who. And so with that, like you said, it resonated with you really well. It was, calling back to some of the work that you'd done, when you were 18 and the caricature work and everything. So first question being, of all the celebrities you got to kind of try and draw and design for, was there any celebrity in particular that you enjoyed finding a design of?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, there were so many, and it was so, caricature for me has always been this, I've always been pulled back into caricature. That's another thing that I recommend anyone who wants to do character design is learn how to do caricature. It's something else that I teach on my school, but it's so vital because that's what character design is. And I love merging those worlds together. And the thing that I love about caricature, and I call it like caricature design, is that these people already exist. So I don't have to think so much all the time. It's just like, I know I got all this photo reference of this person. I even know what they're wearing. I don't have to invent a brand new costume or a new outfit. It's like, this person is known for always wearing this. They wear a hoodie. I'm just going to draw them with a hoodie, or their hairstyle looks like that. So that was always just a fun, and especially on Guess Who, was just getting all these, again, every time there'd be that new script, hey, we need you to design all these different caricatures. The fun thing was that all the celebrities had to approve their caricatures that I did of them. So every single celebrity saw the caricature that I did of them, then they'd go to the read and they'd do their read. And, they were all so fun, some definitely more challenging. The most challenging one that I had was Christian Slater. He just didn't like the way I kept making his forehead too big. And he has a big forehead. If you look at him, you'll go, you probably haven't thought about Christian Slater with a big forehead. But when you look at Christian Slater, that's an aspect that he has a big forehead. So I kept drawing him with a big forehead. And that's when I was getting the best likeness. When I was doing that. And then because he didn't want that, I was shrinking his forehead and I kept losing the likeness. So some of those, could take a lot longer to do. Some of them were a lot more fun, more expressive. I think it was like Malcolm McDowell, when I did him, he was just more, he's got these buggy eyes, and it's just very cool and expressive. So he was sort of like really fun to do. But sometimes, drawing the women can be a little bit more challenging because you don't want to go too exaggerated. I mean, none of the characters were really exaggerated, but you still got to just be careful what you playing with. Like, I remember when I was doing Whoopi Goldberg, I was drawing Whoopi Goldberg the way she kind of looks today, but they wanted her more, don't go today's look, make her more of her younger look, bringing that in. So you get those sort of notes in there. But it's always one of the things where with doing those, though, it always took a lot of work. It's like I would, just never settle. Again, it comes down to that. Drawing the character and trying to put it in that style, that was challenging for sure. And some of the characters I can't remember really all the ones which were more difficult or less difficult than others. But it was, definitely challenging, but definitely really, really fun. And I was hired specifically just to do that. There would be some occasional incidental characters that I was designing as well, background people, different characters. But the majority of it was my responsibility was, Steven, you're the caricature, you're the celebrity guy. That's your role. That's what we need you to do.
Yeah, and so I suppose staying on the celebrities, was there any that the show didn't book that you feel would have been a great design for that art style? Did you have any celebrities in mind that you think maybe could have guest starred but didn't?
Oh, no, not really. I think there were so many obscure ones, that came that I would have never thought that they're going to do this person. Like, there was like, what is it? Tim Nye? No, the science guy. There was like, the scientist ones that, characters that they had. I'd almost have to look, it was such a while ago, but there's none that I can think of that would have been, oh, I can't believe they haven't done this person yet. I think I was more always just shocked by the people that they did. Most of them I never even heard of, to be honest with you. They were like a snowboarder, the famous snowboarder. There was a guy who eats hot dogs, wins all these hot dog, Joey Chestnut, I think his name is, or something, that eats, is the world's fastest hot dog eater, a guy like that. And so there were a lot of different characters that I'm like, I really had to do my research, and sometimes wasn't sure. The thing about caricature is if you're familiar with the people, say I'm going to do Tom Cruise, which he would have been a cool one, but say I did Tom Cruise, I know what Tom Cruise looks like. I've seen him billions of times, to where I know if I'm missing his likeness or not. When I'm having to do a character of someone I'm just not too familiar with, I just haven't seen them enough. Sometimes I'm questioning myself, does it really look like them? Am I missing something? And I need other people's eyes on it to see, can they recognize that person straight away? It's just like if you were to draw someone, a family member, you've seen them a billion times, straight away, oh, you nailed them. It looks just like them. Otherwise, there's something missing. I'm not capturing something. So in caricature, it could be a matter of making those eyes too far up or too far down, that chin or jaw getting small, the nose too high, too low, not being wide enough. It's so subtle that it can really mess with you. And I think a tricky thing that was probably hard, to be honest, for the board artists and the animators was taking the caricatures and really moving them around in space now. Like, a lot of times I may draw, what I would try to do is I draw the main front 3/4 view, which is the most important view, where you draw one full body pose of them. And then you might have to design a side view of them if they show up a lot in side view, maybe a back 3/4 view, show what the back of them. And then I'll do maybe about 3 or 4 expressions just to show how they would actually move and express themselves. And sometimes if you got a certain expression on one of those characters, all of a sudden the likeness went away again. And it's just like, oh my God, you got to be so careful how far you're going to move the mouth, up and down and express it. So that could be tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I can imagine. And I must say, I agree. There was quite a few guest stars for Guess Who that I didn't really know who they were either. But
Yeah.
I know you've touched on this earlier. You said you were mostly focused on the guest stars. So did you get any input into the design of the Mystery Inc. gang at all, or were you not involved with them?
Yeah, no, I was in the very beginning. I was doing so. Dan Haskett, a brilliant designer, so he's the one who set up like the original look and started just to move into that world. And then I came in after him and was still tightening up some things on the gang themselves and just working with some of the proportions. And then I did the turnarounds on the characters and working on some aspects with that. So just, and again, our goal was, and same thing with Chris Bailey again, what I love, I got to say, with just working with Chris Bailey was he's a great director, you know, and he knows what he wants and he says what he wants, you know, and some people get offended, right? Oh my God, you know, people don't want to be told the truth, you know, sometimes. And Chris is a very honest, you know, I'm not feeling it, you know, not seeing, okay, back to the drawing board. And you'd go back and just working back and forth with him, going on these different things, just really building them up and making the little tweaks that we did just to try to get them again. And his idea and his vision was, I want this to feel like the original, right? And I think this is really the first one that ever came back from the original that felt like it was the original series a bit. And that's what I really loved, getting to, you know, again, there were tweaks, you know, if you look at the original cast from way back in the model sheets to where these ones were drawn today, there's definitely some subtle differences for sure, but it's still, we wanted to maintain that real, the original Scooby-Doo look. And I think it came across really well.
Yeah,
What do you guys think? You guys are the experts. How do you guys feel about it?
I mean, it
Yeah.
was definitely a really interesting one. I think it had some of, and I promise I'm not just saying this, it did have some of like my favorite designs from the entirety of the show. I think it's just so
Yeah.
good to look at, but also as well, just intriguing how it was, obviously it was harkening back to that original series from the
Yeah.
70s where they brought in the guest stars. But it was
Yeah.
so interesting to me. The one thing that really struck me, the fact that we had someone like Liza Koshy, who was a celebrity in this show for a job that wasn't even invented back when that original show came out. So to me, that kind of contrast was a bit like,
Oh,
it was a bit mind-boggling.
yeah. That's
But I
funny.
think there were a few things that surfaced. I think there was some drawings of like the Kiss Rock and Roll band who didn't end up
Oh,
in
yeah.
the final version of the show. Do you know what the story was behind that, and if there were other instances of characters that you designed that didn't end up appearing in the end?
Yeah, I'm not so did those characters never show up? Were they never in an episode?
Not of Guess Who, no.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. So I had to design all those guys. That was a lot of work. Wow, and it never even showed up in the series. I didn't realize that. Yeah, that was, hey, we got to do Kiss, and I'd do just a bunch of different variations of that. So yeah, maybe there was a bunch of different designs that showed up that I had to design. I don't know why that didn't end up happening. Maybe it could have been because they couldn't get Gene Simmons and those guys to do the voices. Maybe there was some contractual thing there. This has happened before. When I was at Warner, I was asked to design the Goonies. We were going to do a Goonies animated series, and I designed the Goonies cast, and that ended up getting kicked to the curb just because the original actors kind of didn't sign on and weren't willing to give their likeness, and they weren't getting paid enough, and all this other controversy happened to where Goonies animated never happened. And that would have been really cool just to see that. But I imagine maybe it might have had something to do with contractual something as to why that never happened. But yeah, that's another funny thing about me is working in animation. I read the scripts, I work on the scripts, but very seldomly have I ever watched the full shows. Like even with Guess Who, I've maybe seen about 3 episodes out of the whole series, you know, so I don't even know what they look, you know, what they look like. And even the crazy thing is, even with and I did this, and I was joking with my wife the other day because it was hilarious, but Even with Danny Phantom and Kim Possible, I'd never seen all the shows. You know, I was in them, you know, I was part of them, and then just other people watched them, and, you know, and I grew up with them, and I'd never seen all of them. So sometimes I didn't even know everything, the through line and everything. And last week on YouTube, I was watching these great series someone had put together, Kim Possible from start to finish, you know, not all the episodes, but showing cuts from each episode, what it's all about, how the characters work, who they were, and the same thing with Danny Phantom. So I got, oh, that's what that was all about. I didn't even know, you know, it's kind of hilarious.
It must be difficult because obviously character design is one of the earliest parts that you're probably 5 projects ahead by the time, like you say, it does come out. So you have to kind of think about going back to see those things.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, because we're working, I'll get a script. So first thing is the script gets written. Once that gets written, then it comes to the character designers, where now we need to start designing for what the characters are going to look like, so that the storyboard artists have something to work off. And at that time, the other designers are working on things like location design, prop design. They're starting to put different things together that are needed. Then the show is once they do the storyboards, I get usually about 2 weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks to design a show. The storyboard artist will typically get about 5 to 6 weeks to storyboard the show. Then that gets sent out overseas, and then they take time there. Sometimes that could be gone for 3 to 6 months, you know, where they're animating and everything. Then it comes back. Then you got to do the post-production and add the sound and music and voices, and you're doing all that stuff. And so it takes a while, and then eventually that show gets on the air and comes out, but it could be a long while, and we've already moved on. I'm already on show number 10 by the time they're just getting to show number 4, you know, or 3, right? So it's fast moving. So most productions, when you're hired on a production, you maybe from start to finish, maybe about 1.5 years, 2 years of work on a production. So you're given your start date and your end date on a production, and then you kind of move on to the next show.
That's incredible. As I was saying, the art style, the design of Scooby Doo and Guess Who is like S tier. I think it's one of my favorites from the whole franchise, and I was really happy that they actually adapted that onto some of the later projects. Like we had that used in Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. It was going to be used in Scooby Doo and the Haunted High Rise. Do you know if you were called in to design any of those characters at all from there?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, not that I know. It was all sort of like tied in, because once you have your main model pack and you've created all of that for the show, then anyone else can take all that and do whatever they need for merchandising or anything else that comes from that. They're using that model pack. I know when I was on Kim Possible, I was asked a lot to do a lot of different stuff, like when the McDonald's toys, you know, came out. So I designed the designs for the McDonald's toys and things like that, and or any other might be for a t-shirt or any merch that they may be doing. So from time to time they may need that, but oftentimes they'll have the artists that work in what do they call it? Oh my god, it's off the tip of my tongue. But it's where consumer products, where you get artists who are working on the consumer product division, and they're the ones who you see are all the merchandise. They're creating the artwork for all the merchandise that's in the stores, from Disneyland to Warner Brothers, whoever it may be. And their role is now they're grabbing these model packs that have been designed, the shows have been created. So they got a lot of information to work off, and then they're just reposing the characters and putting them on model for the merchandise.
That is incredible. And moving on to, you know, what's happening now and what's going on in the future, obviously you've touched on that, you know, your book from the Kickstarter, which honestly all throughout this I've been dying to just like try and get a hold of it. But is there anything that you're working on at the moment or on the horizons that you can discuss?
Yeah, so just so you know, the name of the book it's called Character Design Roughs. So, you know, again, it's just full of just all these just different rough sketches. You know, here's some like early Danny Phantoms and bunch of just different things like that. So that's the book that I just recently did. Again, I have my online school, the silverdrawingacademy.com. I love teaching. I found like teaching was my real calling in life, and I actually enjoy doing more of that now. I'm doing that than I do being in the production of a show. I've been in animation designing since 1997, so it's been a long time, and I have so much that I want to share now. So my life's journey and path and purpose really is the teaching aspect, and that's what led me. Besides, I still do freelance and stuff from time to time, but what it led me to, because of my teaching, I want to help artists, and it led me to become a recruiter. So now I'm a recruiter for Disney. So my job now is to help bring artists into Disney to work on the specific show. So I'm helping find the character designers, the prop designers, the storyboard artists, the background painters, the color stylists, the background layout artists. And so that's what I'm doing mainly now is as my role. So between doing my teaching, doing my books, doing some freelance, working as a recruiter, that's kind of where I'm at, with everything I got. And again, I've been working from home. I stopped working in the studios probably about 17 years ago, mainly because I wanted to watch my kids grow up. My kids are all grown up now, but I wanted to just be at home. So that's my whole career I was working in-house, what they call you work in-house, where you're working in-house at the studio for many years. But then I just decided I just want to do this from home. So I've always been working from home and working on just various projects and a lot more. Scooby Doo, the Guess Who was the last full-time production that I was on, where I was working from home, but it was a full turnaround. Every time I get new scripts all the time, and it was constant work. All the other shows that I've been working on have always been now just freelance. Hey, we just need to hire you for a couple of weeks, do development on this, do some development on that. And that's where I'm at. So I never know what's going to happen, what sort of jobs are going to come. And it's kind of nice because doing the sort of lifestyle that I live, it's never Groundhog Day. You know what I'm saying? It's always different. Every single day is different. I never know it's or like Forrest Gump said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. And that's kind of like my life is like, I don't know what's coming from day to day, and I kind of like that. It's exciting.
Certainly. I think for a creative mind like yours, having, like you say, those new challenges thrown your way with not knowing what a script is going to be when you see it kind of arrive, kind of thing, I imagine is what has kept it interesting. And it certainly sounds like there's, it's a very interesting time in the minute, like you say, with the book, the teaching and everything else. Can you please, remind us and everyone else where's best to keep up with your work? And I know you mentioned the website as well for being able to keep track of the book.
Yeah, so the website was silvertunes.com. Maybe you guys can add, links on the thing, and then follow the best where I post a lot, and what I do every day on my Instagram is I just want to share. I have so much insight. I've been in this industry for so long and done so many things, and I know there's a lot of people who are uncertain of where they want to go and what they want to do, and just how to move forward. So on my Instagram, which is just my name, Steven Silver with a PH for Steven Silver 7. On Instagram, you can follow me there, and you'll see that I just post every day just inspirational messages. I just hold up these little cards, and sometimes I'll share videos, and I just want to share some help you kind of move forward, move through whatever struggles or creative struggles you may be going through. And then I also have my YouTube channel where I have a lot of videos discussing all aspects from my experience in the animation industry to business aspects of the industry. And that's I think that's under Silver Tunes, or you can, if you just punch my name in, Steven Silver, then you can track me there through just YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and on my website. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we'll be sure to make sure that all those links are in the description below as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that does conclude all of the questions that we had for you today. Just thank you so much for all the time you've given us and for all the amazing stories and wisdom that you've shared with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And for anyone out there that wants to be a character designer and work in this industry, is just be versatile. Learn how to adapt and draw in many different styles, because that's going to help you just be able to someone to look at your portfolio and say, oh, we're working on Scooby Doo or whatever show it may be. And I can see, not that you have to have Scooby Doo in there, but they can see that you can draw all different genres, and that's going to just help you from one studio to the next throughout your career. And it all starts around with just building up your construction, really learning how to do that. But also remember, just do not settle. Just make sure that you're constantly working on multiple things, trying many ideas and iterations of just one idea, and see where it takes you, and never give up. Can I just I always like to end podcasts and things that I do with a poem that I wrote for artists out there. So if you don't mind, if I could just read
That's
that.
perfect.
On my way, I wrote this book. It's called Conquering the Artist Struggle. I have that on my website too, but this is the poem that I wrote. Hold on here, let me just grab this. All right. Okay, it goes like this. All I have ever done is enjoyed what I ever do. My mind was open, my mind was clear. I did not stop to think of fear. I open up my mind, think of an idea, put it into action, and see what will appear. It can never be a failure because I learned along the way. If I did not succeed, I'll try another day. Stay calm and smile. Enjoy the things you do. Life will get much better as long as you are you. All right, so that's how I like to end it.
I
That was
love that.
amazing.
That definitely is the absolute pitch perfect way to end this on. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
And for the
thanks so
purpose
much.
of wrapping up the video, you can find all of the links for Dan in the description and our link tree in the description. If you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.